What's up, electric people? This one is going to be fun. We have Rob Machado on the podcast, aka the Style Lord, aka the best free surfer in the world. So this one is kind of like a highlight for me. I've watched Rob surf for years and years and years. Actually, before I even surfed, I knew who Rob Machado was. He's a logo, right? He's got the hair, he's got the vibe. It's all great. He's ridden for companies like Firewire, Dragon, Hurley, some of the biggest surf and lifestyle brands in the world. But recently we became friends and connected on a surf project that turned into a solar project that turned into a brand ambassadorship for Sunrun. It's the beautiful fusion of two worlds. And what you're going to notice with Rob is he thinks a lot like us. So the lifestyle and the selling points that we help people understand every single day are core to his philosophy and the way that he lives his life. So it was an honor to sit down with him and just share in his journey. A couple of the highlights of his career. So he was a professional tour surfer for about 10 years and has been a professional surfer for maybe 30, something like that. He won the Pipe Masters. He won the U.S. Open of Surfing, and was really kind of the first person in the surf industry to kind of break away and do this lifestyle thing. When I say free surfing, it means he'll show up to contests every now and then, but more produces his own content, does his own brand alignment and ambassadorship, and kind of like portrays through his lifestyle and through his content what it's like to be he calls himself a soul surfer, but what it's like to move through the world as a surfer. And it's really cool. It's brought him a lot of collaborations and a lot of partnerships. But he talks about that transition and what it was like. I mean, there wasn't really a path for that before, where now there really is. So it's really cool, really insightful, really interesting conversation. I've not talked to many people that have the level of intentionality and kind of like the just true north and personal compass, the moral compass to live the way he wants to live. And that brings us to Sunrun. So we actually he was a solar customer since like 2006, before Sunrun was even a company. His lifestyle changed as far as energy needed more electricity. So Sunrun was there. He's been a Sunrun customer for like 10 years. I met him not quite a year ago, maybe 8 months ago. And we started talking about re-upping his system again. So he's a real example of somebody where the company has kind of grown with him as we've evolved our products, and his life has expanded. We've been there to kind of like supply the power for the home base. So now there's a partnership. You'll see some content coming out. It's really awesome stuff. He's backed up with batteries. He's got max power. Really cool thing. So anyway, we talk about life. We talk about roots. We talk about the environment. We talk about self-development. We talk about how all that stuff is just like what we do. So enjoy this episode, friends. This is Rob Machado. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People. Well, hey, man, thanks for making the journey up north.
Gosh, out of the bubble.
Out of the bubble.
Yep.
You ventured out of the bubble twice that I know of. Once to Salt Creek.
Yes.
In July of 24.
That's correct.
And then today for Electric People podcast. We're honored.
Oh, the Electric People. Can I play the song?
Yeah, do the song, man.
Okay, let's go. Let's start it right.
What's the guy's name again?
It's his Eddie Grant.
Eddie Grant. Yeah.
See, this is all about the Electric People.
Yeah. It's such like
good.
Yeah, it's such like a deliberate fade in. Like you can't help but be pulled into it.
And for any of you listeners out there, we want to know what other hits Eddie Grant has had.
If you have any Eddie Grant stories, any
anything.
sightings, send them our way.
The cover shot of his album is truly impressive.
I always think though, like when you like surf in the morning, it's got to be like hours before that dries,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's wet.
It's just like
I just surfed, so
it's like perpetually kind of just
smells
wet.
Good. Smells like I surfed.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's the thing right there.
So yeah,
it's why
it's a commitment.
We were saying like when we did, there's some really cool lifestyle content that we shot that we'll get into, but it looked really good. I got to like what you were filming at. I got to like look through the 8K camera and see it. But the thing is, you photograph well, man, with the hair. Like it just works. Like that's why people are always wanting the shot. It just works, man. It works.
It you know, I've had a few mishaps with the hair.
Oh, really?
Well, there's a certain length, right? When it gets, I just kind of cut it, but it gets to a certain length when I'm paddling out, and it falls through my armpits, and then I go to stand up on a wave, and it actually wraps around, like it gets stuck in my hand, because your hands are right here when you stand up, right?
So that's the length.
And that's kind of the cutoff. It's like, okay, I need to cut my hair.
Well, it probably gets longer too when it's wet. Does it get?
Yeah. And you duck dive a wave, and then you got to remember, you're like, your back's arched and your head's way back, so your hair is like.
And it weighs a couple pounds. It's tugging on you. I
always try
think
to build up my neck muscles.
Yeah, I always think like my wife. My wife's 5'2", and when we first met, she had really long hair, and like a concert experience was a completely different experience for her, because I'm above it and everything, and she's just getting her hair pulled, and you know what I mean? Like it's just like always in the way. You know?
Yeah.
But you've pushed through it. I thought it looked shorter than the last time. Then when I met you in the summertime, it was longer in those pictures.
It got pretty long.
Yeah.
It was down there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I'm feeling light right now.
Feeling light and loose.
Woo.
So walk me through a typical morning. You said you just surfed. We're 11 o'clock, but what's a day in the life like?
Yeah. This morning was pretty active. Up at the crack of dawn.
What's the crack of dawn for you?
That is
like
first light.
Okay. So
it's like around 6:30. So I'm up at.
Are you like a no alarm guy?
Yeah. I just wake up, and 6:30, grab the dog, do a hot lap around the block. First thing, yeah, just straight out the door. I might make a cup of tea, fresh ginger, hot water, a little bit of honey. That's kind of the morning ritual. Take the dog, do about a mile stroll around the neighborhood, and today was kind of a comeback, wake up the Grom, the 11-year-old. It's a school day. Yeah, he's got to be to school at 8:30. So get him out of bed, dressed, making him a pancake, some scrambled eggs. Get it
full dad mode.
Full dad mode.
That's cool.
Made my wife a coffee. Made myself some breakfast. I was juggling chainsaws.
You're like, okay, so for the women listening, you've woken up, you've walked the dog, you got your son ready, made everybody in the house breakfast, like no big deal. Yeah. You've earned the surf, is what it is.
Totally.
I'm the kind of husband that wakes up and leaves first thing to go surfing if I'm going to get it in. It's just like the only time.
Yeah. But dude, I do that sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Depends on, it's a life by the tides to some degree, huh?
Totally. And I knew kind of like I had to get him to school. So I got him to school. That's 8:30. Boom, straight down to the beach. And I was like, I'm on a schedule. Knew I had to be here. Yeah. So I just.
So you got like an hour.
Good hour.
In the water.
Yeah. Hour, power. Yeah. So I kind of like getting back to my daily routine. So surf. Later today, I'll pick my son up from school and go straight to baseball practice. I'm now a coach on his baseball team. So that's pretty interesting. So that's kind of, that'll take me to dark, and then it'll be dinner and nap time. But I do have kind of an alternate version of a day, which is wake up, walk the dog. If I'm not in a rush to go for a surf or take my kid to school, I will turn the sauna on before I go for my walk, come straight back from the walk, jump in the sauna, straight from the sauna into the ice bath, into a full kind of stretching little workout session for an hour.
Sauna ice stretch?
Yeah.
So you're stretching cold?
I'll stretch in the sauna.
Yeah.
While I'm in the sauna. And then I'll go ice, and then when I come out of the ice, I'll go straight into like push-ups, squats, kind of to warm my body back up, which I don't know who to believe anymore. I'm listening to Huberman, Brecka, Rogan. Like, it's like everyone's got their theories. That one feels pretty good to me. I kind of think, I don't know what scientifically is right, but I feel like that's a good blend, because when you get out of an ice bath, you feel just like this.
Yeah, there's a little pump, right? Like a little surge. I feel like that when I listen to like Huberman and those guys talk about the ideal thing, it feel like you talking about like fins that are slightly, I'm like,
right.
Is this a thing that's gonna make a difference for you or for me? Because I'm not at that level of fitness. So they're like, you really should time it and do this. And it's like, I feel like if I'm cold plunging and doing hot and cold and working out, I'm doing good. Yeah. Now, whether or not I do it before or after, you're probably not going to see it on me the next day. We're like, oh, did you? Yeah. You plunged first, didn't you?
Yeah, you did.
Like, yeah, you should have done. Yeah, the other way. It feels. That's been my favorite routine. Is like if I go on a run or like a mountain bike or something like that, and then straight into the cold.
Yeah.
and then I do like body weight workout and stuff. It warms your body up, and they say like you get like a testosterone boost from that. Like
Right.
it's
I
a
heard
little
that too.
inconvenient to work out. Like you would like to work out and then get cold,
Yeah.
but
I
they
tried
say
that.
You should do it the other way.
The interesting one, I did like a surf in the wintertime, come in super cold, your hands are cold, your feet are cold, and then I went in the ice bath, and I was like, it was a really interesting feeling because my hands were already numb.
Yeah.
And my feet were already numb, so they didn't really even feel anything.
Like
but then your body is super warm from your wetsuit, right? So, yeah.
That's my weakness. That's my like if I surf, I don't cold plunge. I'll maybe do it at night. Like if I sit in a hot tub, I'll like earn the hot. Like I'll get in the cold first and then do it. But I'm just like, dude, I've been sitting in 55-degree water for an hour and 20 minutes with my hands and my feet in. So I feel like,
and there's benefits from that. There's benefits from just getting your face in cold water.
Yeah.
So like we're already ahead of the curve. Like you want to talk about grounding.
Yeah.
Like we're walking in sand with water, barefoot.
Yeah.
We're getting sun. Like we're checking a lot of boxes as surfers.
And you can't be on your phone, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be pretty focused on what's going on.
Yeah.
At least not distracted by something else.
That's the best part, man.
Yeah. Like there is kind
yourself.
there is kind of a resetting from it for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, actually let's loop the audience in here. So I don't even know if you know,
someone's listening.
I don't even know if you know who you're talking to right now, but we are a group of, we call them suburbanpreneurs. So they're entrepreneurial spirit fueled by big company resources. So there's all across the country right now, there are thousands of sales reps that are supported by Sunrun that are getting geared up to go out, and they're going to self-generate leads. They're going to knock doors. They're going to create relationships out of thin air, and they're going to try to warm people up to this cause of powering your life a better way. And so it's hard. Like knocking doors is really hard. And there's people, believe it or not, that don't want to be persuaded into that way of life when you knock their door unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And so for the salespeople and the leaders, this is our opportunity to create our lives. This is our opportunity to earn well and to create kind of a life that we're excited about. But you meet a lot of resistance. And so when we had started this, primarily it was to give the people that are going out at different phases of their career kind of access to people that have figured it out. Like I've been a door knocker for 21 years or something like that. And so oftentimes I find myself in conversations with people where I'm like, I wish this other group that I'm going to speak to tomorrow, I wish they could hear this because it helps them. What we found in the journey is there's a lot of people that use the exact same mental tools and thought processes to have successful lives and lives that they're excited about that don't have anything to do with door knocking. These are our electric people, right? And so candidly, man, like you've since I've started surfing and since I've known about your brand and stuff, you've been my absolute favorite surfer. It's been I imagine you hear that a lot, but it's like, it's funny because we'll try and keep this on the comfortable side of awkward, but I always tell people, like when I started surfing, I was like, if I could look like anybody surfing, it'd be Rob Machado. Like I see real, like it looks fun. There's a lot of like technique and it looks very intentional. Right. And so what I found in like having we've had Tony Hawk on the podcast. We've had a lot of like high level athletes and people like that. And what makes you good and successful is exactly what a lot of our people need to apply to their lives in their sport or their like way of moving through the world.
Right.
Yeah. So I had met you when one of my buddies reached out to get a custom board made on Instagram, and you had said, just text me. Yeah. And then he sent me your number and I was like, dude, I want a board made too. And that quickly turned into like I was standing on the beach, like with my family. It turned into like a 20-minute, I got all these questions about surfing and maybe you can help me. And so that was pretty awesome. Like that you actually took the time to do it, that you were approachable. But as we've gotten to know you and as our brands have kind of come together, I just kind of want to help tell that story to the people that could really be inspired by it. So
very cool.
I didn't tell you all that before because I didn't think you'd come, but now that you're here, you got
here.
at least an hour blocked.
I can't leave.
So talk about like, you're pretty rooted in California. You've got deep family roots. Maybe talk about the Machado Sepulveda clan,
the migration.
Yeah, and how you're connected to the state here.
Yeah. Well, we could go back to, I think it was early 1800s. It was my great grandfather rode on a horse from Sinaloa, Mexico, up to one of the missions. They were building the missions all up and down California. It was up in Los Angeles. And
What
one
kind
of
of distance is that?
yeah,
Sinaloa to LA. What is that?
that's a great question. We'd have to Google that one.
Where does Sinaloa sit?
It's mainland. You know, if you crossed over from like the tip of Cabo over to mainland, I believe it's in that kind of realm.
So you got like 150 miles, maybe?
No,
More?
what is it? Is it called the Baja 1000 because the entire length of Baja is 1,000 miles?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 1,000 miles right
Yeah.
there, just to get all the way up to the top.
But is it a loop? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're talking
Straight run. So it's far. It's far on a horse.
It's far.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, we'll be there tomorrow,
Okay.
like us today. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna jump on a plane and be in wherever.
Yeah. So
the
Sinaloa
other
is
side of the world.
deep.
It's deep. So he came up to work on the mission, and one of his kids, Jose Agustin Machado, kind of wandered down to the coast, and we're talking coastline. I'm going to say Marina del Rey, spanning up to about Santa Monica.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then if you drew a square inland, it was 14,000 acres all the way back to Culver City and then across and back down.
So pretty much everything that people know as some of the most valuable real estate in the
Yeah.
world. I mean, it's literally Los Angeles coastline and inland.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty wild. When you look at a map and you put this square on top of it, 14,000 acres in the middle of Los Angeles is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And
So you just like settled it.
he settled it and he claimed it, and he had to fight for it, and he had to deal with squatters. And when people started coming west, the gold rush, I mean, how do you manage 14,000 acres?
What kind of mileage is that? Like
That's
square mileage, do you know?
Another good question. I
Yeah.
don't know, but it's a lot. When you think of like Marina del Rey all the way up to, like, even just driving from Marina del Rey to Culver City, you know, is it 5 to 10 miles?
So you were
Right.
saying like they used to measure those distances as like what you could ride your horse in a day.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like you could have people live there and just never know.
Never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was my great grandfather, and then my grandpa, Jose Oscar Machado, he actually sold off his last remaining piece of land in Culver City. Just, you know, he was getting older and he just didn't want to deal with it anymore, and he sold it to a developer. They came in and developed it and put a street in. It was now butts up. It's to Sepulveda, which was my great grandmother's name, and there's Machado Street in downtown Culver City.
Yeah, it's
So,
wild, isn't it?
yeah, it's kind of crazy. There's
Just to think of like what it probably looked like back then too, right? Like
it's probably beautiful.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I feel like that when I go up like the Central Coast, I'm always like, why don't more people, like when you get up to like San Simeon, like up there, like where like the Hearst Castle and stuff is out there, like why? I mean, San Luis Obispo is pretty like populated, but why is it empty? It's so beautiful up there.
Yeah.
And just there's that ranch up there that's like still private or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? I can't remember what it's like gated. You have to live in the community to be able to surf there, which I thought was illegal, but I think
Right. Yeah.
maybe
yeah.
it's just super localized.
You're talking closer to Santa Barbara, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Hollister.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Hollister
what I was
Ranch.
talking about.
Yeah.
But that area, it seems like maybe that is what it would have looked like before. Now you can't even imagine it.
Yeah. I always say that when I go up there. It's like, oh, this is what it probably felt like 100, 150 years ago.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's just rolling hills and empty space. And
It's amazing. We do motorcycle rides, and my favorite motorcycle ride is I just love going up to Big Sur. Just like once you get kind of like once you get to like North Ventura, and then to Big Sur, it's one of the very best.
Yep.
It's super
I totally
awesome up
agree.
there.
If you get it on a good day,
Yeah.
like it's hard to beat.
We had one guy, he'll appreciate this story, but you kind of get in the zone. Like you ever ride motorcycles, you get like into this like meditative kind of like the hum and the visual and stuff. And he's like a developmental guy, and he's like, he was telling us we had stopped after a near-death experience, and we were like following him, and then all of a sudden he was like going straight out in those cliffs. Like they have like the little guardrail, but then it's 1,000 feet, like down, like it's sure death. And all of a sudden he locked his bike up and slid towards this guardrail and kind of like went right up into the guardrail, and then like feet after that the guardrail like ended, and we were like, "What were you doing, dude?" And he's like, I just got like super grateful, and I was driving around, and like he's like, I was in my head, and I started saying a prayer like, oh, I'm just so grateful for this life, and this is beautiful, and thank you, and like almost drove right off a cliff.
No
So
way.
it's like, it's good and bad. Like
Yeah,
it can put
yeah.
you in that zone.
Wow. Yeah. Put him in full trance.
Yeah. It's like, be like 70% grateful, not 100%.
Yeah,
You gotta be here for your kids, you know?
Yeah, totally.
But then you grew up in pretty much where you're at now, down
I did.
in Cardiff area.
Yeah. So my dad grew up in Culver City.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he graduated from college, he got on a boat and started traveling around the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he
What
went
kind of boat?
kind of nomadic. He got dropped off in Long Beach and worked on a boat.
Like a fishing boat or something?
Yeah, like
or-
just like some vessel.
Wow.
And he went, well, actually, gosh, the story started it was actually, that happened later. Actually, my timelines get messed up. But one story started where he found an ad in the newspaper of people that needed their car to be driven across country. And him and his buddy were like,
He's like, perfect.
dude, let's do it.
Yeah.
So these people flew and they loaded up they gave them their station wagon and some cash to stay in some hotels. And they drove the thing cross country to like New Jersey. And then when they got there, they're like, I don't know, what should we do now? And
Can you imagine?
right?
I just wait. Yeah. Like that sounds so amazing.
Okay.
You know?
So they literally were like, let's looked into this boat that was this Norwegian cruise vessel that was going to go across to Europe. So they buy tickets, jump on this boat, go over to England. They end up buying some motorcycles in England.
Jeez.
They ride motorcycles all around England, take the ferry across. They end up in Germany. Motorcycles break down. They buy a VW bus. They drove the VW bus all over Europe, Austria. They were skiing. They were more on like the snow adventure, right? They're in the mountains working, skiing. They worked all the way down, and they ended up in the Suez Canal, and they got on another boat all the way over to Singapore, and then they got on a flight from Singapore to Darwin.
This is a movie.
Yeah, I know. I have
That's
all this.
crazy.
I have it all documented and
Oh, really?
and photographs, and
That's
it's
cool.
incredible. I've been I've been putting it together kind of, but they got to Darwin and then they started working their way down and they got to the Gold Coast and they're like, wow, this is pretty cool. And they could surf there. So they were surfing and then they made it down south to the mountains down south in southern Australia. And at some point, that's when my dad met my mom. And
That's where it comes together because you were born in Australia.
yeah, so
Yeah.
they came back here, and when they came back here, they're kind of like Culver City wasn't really cool anymore. It wasn't happening.
Especially after that trip.
After Australia, you're like, yeah.
You could go to the valley. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, totally. So they're like, let's go back to Australia. And they discovered the northern beaches. You know, you have like Narrabeen and Whale Beach and Palm Beach and all.
Did you like a family of settlers and adventurers?
Right.
That's crazy.
So they relocated there. They lived there for like 15 years. My brother and I were born there. I lived there till I was like 4, 5. So that takes us to like 78 when we moved back here. And we moved directly to North County, San Diego.
So you got dual citizenship then for being born there.
Correct, yeah.
That's awesome.
And
you
then
were just in Australia recently, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I went
down there?
there, when was that? In August, I believe, yeah. It was cool. It was really cool. I hadn't been there in years, and it was nice to go back and reconnect. And I used to, being on tour, I would go there every year. It was just like clockwork.
Yeah.
You were just there, and
You
you'd
feel like
spend
a sense of like home being there? Like, is there something like kind of
Yeah.
that draws you there from being from there for like your
Totally.
first part of life?
Totally. There's connection. I just have like my parents had so many friends and they had kids and those kids are growing up, and so I have these connections to these families that I go and stay with and visit, and it's super interesting, and I've been doing it for so many years, so like to not go there for a handful, gosh, maybe even almost close to 10 years, just felt good to go back and be there. And I actually got to hang out with the guy, his name's Eddie, that my dad did the trip with.
Not the guy from Electric Avenue. Is that
Not
Eddie?
His name is Eddie Cadis. The guy that him and my dad found the ad in the newspaper and drove the car across country.
No way.
So he came and we hung out. And he brought all his photos and stories.
Dude, those moments where you see how you're connected to people, it blows you. Like, there's something to that, right? Like, you don't just meet up with. I mean, that would have been how many years later?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they did that in like the 60s.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
It's 40 something years
he was
later.
like so excited
Oh,
to
sure.
sit. And I just like recorded the whole conversation, and he brought photos and all kinds of stuff. And we
What a
just,
cool thing.
it was really, really cool just to kind of hear his version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard my dad's version. And, you know, like you're telling stories
Oh,
from
yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, no, we
Yeah.
weren't in Austria then. First
Yeah.
we went to Switzerland, and then, you know.
Yeah,
like-
just how your brain works.
Yeah.
Dude, that's wild.
So it's kind of cool.
That's a cool thing. So that's kind of given you it, like when you have connections, like I've always found like there's something like, I don't know, it's just like delightful when you can go to a place and have some familiarity. So it's like you get to go do this adventure in Australia, and then you find yourself in a living room with people that you would never hang out with before, and somehow it makes the whole experience so much like richer, you know?
So much better. Like I ended up at the wave pool down in Sydney for a little surf session with some people, and it's all these people from different surf shops had come, and it's like you see their face, and I'm like, I've seen you before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, like I've like bumped into these people over the years of being in Australia, and this one kid comes up to me, and he's like, hey, my dad said I had to come say hi to you, and it was Damien Hardman's son. Right. And I'm just like, wow, I used to serve against your dad, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah,
like,
that's amazing.
man. You
Well,
know,
people are like, my wife touched your hair in France. Do you remember?
Totally.
I have a friend that was he's in this band, and I'd asked him once, I'm like, hey, when you're, big traveling band in like the OC, like ska punk scene back in the day. And I was like, when you're like going from spot to spot and you look at the crowd, because they're not black faces. Like when you look out onto like a crowd, you can see people. And I was like, do you see familiar people? And he's like, all the time. Like, so like I've often been in crowds and like, oh, it's good to see you again. And I'm like, you don't remember. But he said that literally there would be people and you get kind of confused. Do I know you from the East Coast or the West Coast? Do I know you from Australia or from Hawaii? Yeah. But that your brain kind of has that ability to like lock in and
remember faces,
grab that familiarity.
For sure. Like I'm terrible with names. So I'd just be like, oh man, like I know I've hung out with you and seen you. I've been in your shop. Like, and there's
but
people.
I don't remember what decade or what country or
totally.
Yeah.
Like my hard drive's a little filled up. So it's
got
like,
some salt in it.
It's a little crusty. I've had some funny moments. I had a really good moment. I'll tell a quick story. I was in Portugal and my friend's like, oh, let's go check this spot. We pull up and we're looking at the waves. He's like, have you ever been here? I was like, nah. No way. No. Yeah, I've never served. Like, I'd remember this. There's a couple cool jetties and like restaurants on the beach, and literally, we're walking back to the parking lot, and this guy runs up. No way, Rob. What's up, dude? Remember me? And I'm like, no, what? And he's like, me and you surfed here, like in 2003.
Wow.
Like at this beach right here. And I was
He's like, you come here all the time.
My friend looks at me like, oh my.
Dude, that's wild. There's got to be something to it, though. There's got to be something, like, because the odds of showing up at I don't know, maybe it happens to you, but to be in the exact same spot at the same time as that guy, that's a wild thing.
Right.
You know?
So I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's
just the
cool.
things that happen.
It makes life exciting, doesn't it?
Totally. You never, totally the unexpected, who you bump into anywhere around the world at any time, and their story. And there's so many, everyone has an interesting story to tell.
There's this, the guy that founded Zappos, his name Tony Hsieh. He's dead now, but he's a real unique guy. He was like a pretty like just atypical guy, and he built their whole like cultures. Like Zappos started selling shoes online, like in that early boom, but it was built on serendipitous like encounters. So the way the building was designed, it was designed so people would like cross paths. And so like, when there were certain meetings happening, they like architected the space and the campus for serendipitous like things like that. And usually you would have like a mission to service the world's whatever, like bring happiness through your soul of a shoe. That's a good one. Hey, someone should use that. But the fact that he could like think maybe beyond a little bit of like, hey, we're all people, and this is a people business. I don't know, made me think of that. It's an interesting thing.
No, it is a really good thing, man, because I saw a funny one on, I don't know if it's funny, it's kind of sad in a way, but it's like, it was like a kid walking down the street on his phone, like using maps or whatever, or just geeking out on something. And like he walks to this corner and he's like trying to figure out like which way to go. And this girl walks by and he kind of looks up at her and then like goes, oh, I'm going to go that way. And then it cuts to like, without a phone, let's say. And he's walking with like a map, and he stands on the corner again, and the girl walks up, and he like looks at her, and he goes, "Excuse me, can you show me like?" Yeah. And then it like fast forwards, and it's like they're getting married, they're having kids, and it's like starts this whole like spiral, right? And you're like, oh wow, like that's the thing that like technology can be kind of dangerous in that way. Yeah. Right. Amazing in so many ways, and sometimes.
No, dude, that's really powerful. Like when you think about it like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's it's kind of like just a reminder to like tune in a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Man, that's wild. So started surfing. You did kind of like traditional sports as like a super young kid. Got exposed to everything, soccer and stuff like that. Started surfing around 10?
Yeah, I was probably playing in the ocean, bodyboarding, body surfing, 7, 8, 9,
So I'm interested in your take on this because just recently, I can't cite where it came from, but, we're seeing people, like if you get into it, my girls dance, and dance is their life. Yeah. And it's like, it's so involved, right? Yeah. And then, my sons play traditional sports, and you met my oldest son. He likes to surf and skateboard and all that stuff. But you kind of think like nowadays with the amount of coaching available, with the amount of technology, that if you don't lock in on your sport like super young, you're not going to have a chance. Like I follow Supercross, and Supercross is like that. Like if you're not like, if your dad doesn't have the toy hauler and like you're not on the road with a coach and like touring, it's pretty hard to be competitive. But just recently, there have been a lot of people saying like, hey, don't rush into it. Like you're not late.
Yeah.
And so when I think of you starting, 10 actually isn't that early, especially nowadays. Like nowadays you see like the surf dads out there and like the kids, like they are like surfing really, really young.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Like,
I
mean, you have an 11-year-old. So what's your thought and philosophy on when people find their thing and how much to push and encourage? And
totally, man. Like that is it's a very interesting, like, because it does feel like some sports you have to start young and you have to really kind of dedicate. Like I feel like skateboarding, man, it just feels like the kids, they're so elastic and they can learn how to fall and they can improve and get through those really rough patches quicker and easier when they're really young.
The healing, the low center of gravity.
Yeah.
Like the skateboarding stuff, Japan again, coming out of Japan.
Yes.
Is insane. Like
crazy.
The way like the center of gravity and the ability to have resources and stuff, like these kids that are like the Olympians are like 11 now.
So that's something. But on the other side, like I look at, my brother's a baseball coach, and I talk, and they're like, go play Little League. Mm-hmm. Don't play year round. Mm-hmm. Like, dude, when Little League's done, go skate, go surf, go play basketball, like go play football, like do everything. Like that is going to develop more skills that are going to lead you to maybe choosing a singular sport when you get to is it 13 or 14? I love hearing stories about like an NFL player that like, oh, he didn't even touch a football until he was in like his freshman year of college.
That's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are both like that. Some of the greatest we've ever seen got serious in like high school.
So you're like why put him through all this, like these early phases of brutalness, like punishment?
Well, and the strain in your relationship, like forcing your kid to go surf or forcing him to go play and forcing him to.
It's harsh.
But then again, like you wonder, am I giving him an advantage? And if I was completely left alone, I wouldn't have had any ambition. It's a tough balance.
There's a push. There's a certain amount you can push, but you can't push too far. And there's a way to maybe try and inspire them. Like my son, it's like he hates cold water. So this time of year, it's like I'm like not pushing him to surf at all. He loves baseball. I'm like, cool, we're all in on baseball. It's great. But there's those days, like we had a Santa Ana. It's 80 degrees outside. The waves are waist to shoulder high. It's glassy. I'm like, today's our day.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm going to push a little harder. Like I'm going to leave you alone on the onshore cloudy, rainy day. Like today is a great day to go to the beach and ride a couple waves.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to push you. Like, let's just get out there. Yeah. And he acknowledges that. And I think we have a good balance. We understand that. So,
what I think happens too is when, it's not as much the time, it's like the deliberate time, right? Because if you have been doing it for 10, like I'll give you an example. My parents forced me to play the piano as a kid, and I freaking hated it.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't playing any music that I wanted to play. I thought I was like a little embarrassed by it. None of my friends did that kind of stuff. And so I had to play the piano. So I played from when I was 8 to 13, which are such valuable years. They're such formative years. If you can learn music at age 8 or even younger. Yeah. So I quit at 13, walked away from it, hated it. I served a church service mission in South America. I was 19. And all of a sudden I felt this pull to play music. Yeah. I bought a little keyboard. Yeah. I called it the Cholo. That was the name of my little keyboard. And I started playing on my own. Yeah. And then I brought back, learned how to read music again, and I played on my own. And my improvement from age 19 to 20 was, I mean, it would have been the sharpest curve. Yeah. And I didn't play for those 5 years, but when I came to it, I wanted to learn it. Yeah. And so you see people like that. I mean, I told you about my surfing next to Caroline Marks. Yeah. If you don't know Caroline Marks, she just won an Olympic gold medal. But I mean, I saw her from the ages of 14 to like 19, and the deliberate, like the drastic improvement at that time, it wouldn't have helped if she had surfed a few extra years, like, and not been as focused. So I wonder if it's like when your mind and your body can come to it because it wants to, that's where like the explosion kind of happens.
That's where it all like really kicks in, the drive. Like your kid has to be coming in and waking you up at 6 a.m. Like, I got my wetsuit on, like, let's go. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of drive. Like, I don't care if it's raining, it's freezing cold. Like, I just want to go out and get my reps in and like try to get better. Like that desire and that like that grit, that determination, I think is when you see these like drastic improvements. And like, I'm not going to be the dad that's waking my kid up at 6.
I've tried that.
At 6 in the morning.
You get all your reps in on the first kid. So I've tried that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've pushed too hard and I've not pushed, and they've chosen me and said emphatically no. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So and I'm sure every kid's different. Like, some kids need more of a push and some kids, they need less. And it's just, you have to figure it out and do the dance. Like, that's kind of what makes parenting fun.
Pro tip for cold water. Am I in a place where I can give you a pro tip?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll take it.
2 words, Slurpee Saturday.
Slurpee Saturday.
Drop a Slurpee Saturday on them, but you only get the Slurpee if you serve. Slurpees are still like $1.40. They're like nothing.
I know. Five waves. I like have that's my program is like, you got to go out and catch 5 waves.
Get 5.
And maybe sometimes maybe a donut. Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit, because the part of your career that fascinates me is the part where you really stand alone. Like, we like to have people on this podcast that when you think about surfing and a standout, or you think about music and a standout, like, who is that person? I would define that as electricity, right? And so when you think of the surfing community, you're someone, for me, that went a different direction. You really did it differently than anybody, especially at the time, right? So summary, like early 90s till early 2000s, you're on the Pro Tour. Yeah. So Pro Tour is incredibly competitive. You're traveling around the world. You're surfing against people that are your friends and your harshest competitors. Yeah. People that this has been their goal for their whole life. Yeah. And nowadays that seems pretty counter to like the type of surfing that you like to do. So maybe talk about what you liked and didn't like about the Pro Tour, and lead us into your decision to go a different way.
Yeah. I mean, just touching on what you said, you're traveling around the world with your friends that you're competing with and traveling with, sharing rental cars, sharing hotel rooms.
Complicated, huh?
Like, really complicated. Like, we could be staying in a room together, like this big, and have a heat together that day, where we're like, this is awkward. I'm supposed to be like, I'm going to beat you.
When you have contracts that financially incentivize you to beat this person, to where it's like, hey, I'm halfway around the world. This is how I get paid. Yeah, is to beat you. Like, that's got to be complex.
Yeah, you had to really understand the dynamics of when you go out in the water and put a jersey on. It's work, and it's not about who you are as a person. You're a color at that point. If you're wearing a blue jersey, that's what you are. I'm not concerned with who you are, if you're my friend or not. I'm going to treat you like every other guy that I'm going to surf against. But when I come back to the beach, I want to be able to take my jersey off. And when you take your jersey off, we're like, hey, we did our best. Best man wins. And I think our friend group had a really decent ability to do that. That's how we
didn't have much coaching at that either, because you were kind of the first group.
Yeah. No, we didn't have coaches. Nobody had a coach. So we were all like we were helping each other. Like we were coaching each other and
Swapping boards and stuff sometimes.
I mean, it was just
maybe,
like we were all in this together. It was kind of a group effort, but it was individual. It was a little bit confusing, but we did the best we could. So yeah, I my last year on tour was 2000. 2001 was kind of just, I think I surfed 1 or 2 events and then ended up not making it back on tour.
You're kind of like transitioning at that point, maybe.
Yeah, it was I wasn't really ready to transition, but I didn't think I was, but it was kind of handed to me. So I started venturing down other routes. And
before you go into that, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to. Talk about Hawaii. I think your story while in your pro days moving to Hawaii, I found a lot of like developmental content in where and fill in the blanks, but as I understand, I surfed, like last time I was in Hawaii, I surfed VLAN and Mike Ho was out there, who's like just a legend. And VLAN's tricky. Yeah. Like it kind of stands up and you think you're in the right spot and you're not. And so I was on not from there, which is more of a big deal if you're redheaded and light skinned and not from Hawaii and they haven't seen you there before. Yeah. Then I'm on my friend's board. I'm at VLAN with some legends, but Hawaii waves are different, right? Oh, yeah. Like the ground, they're shallow and there's reef and there's rocks and they're steep and they're fast and they're powerful. Yeah. I've surfed kind of everywhere. And I really like California. Like, water's pretty deep.
It's pretty
waves aren't pretty. They're not that steep. You know what I mean? Like, I never get cut on reef. But when you're a competitive surfer, you have to surf in very different places. So, Pipeline. The things that I've seen on it is they say that by like accidents and stuff that it's the deadliest wave in the world. Yeah. Just by the size of it, the depth of the water and the crowds and all that kind of stuff. But to be a competitive surfer from California, you have to master, it's almost like a different, I don't know, you tell me, maybe not a different sport, but a different division in the sport for sure. And so you had to learn that, live with one of your best friends / competitors. Maybe talk me through that. Yeah,
man, Hawaii was, I mean, just to go back, like I grew up surfing a wave called Swamis. And I didn't even actually surf Swamis. I surfed like the crappy beach break down the way.
Place you could find to yourself.
Yeah, it's called Dabbers. And that was like my little zone. Then I started surfing inside Swamis, and I never went to outside Swamis. I was like the scared kid. I was nervous. I was legitimately scared of bigger waves. Then I like kind of moved down the beach to like Cardiff Reef, and then I ended up Seaside Reef. And Seaside Reef was like, whoa, breaks way out in the ocean. Stands up, it's this peak, kind of has some ledges on it. I was like, man, that's super intimidating. So like, I didn't have that like, just go for it kind of like throw yourself over the ledge mentality. And when I first went to Hawaii, man, I was like, just like a deer in headlights. The energy was so intense. The energy of the ocean is one thing. And then you've got the crowds and the energy on the beach and just everything about it is so unique. And
they're like, hey, pro surfer, to these guys that grew up at that wave that are gnarly, right?
Gnarly, yeah. You have all the locals who are just, they're out there just catching any wave they want, and I'm sitting on the shoulder. I literally had to just ease my way into this whole situation and like find some sort of comfort in being out there. And it was super challenging. I was hanging out with guys like Ross Williams and Shane Dorian and Kelly Slater and like these guys were already charging. Like they were surfing Waimea when they're 16, 15. I mean, that was just fun for them. They'd grown up on the North Shore. It was like kind of what they did. And here comes this skinny kid from California like, hey, all right, cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want nothing to do with this. But at the time, when I signed my first pro deal, I think I was 18, right out of high school, like with Gotcha. They're like, you need to go to Hawaii. This is like one of the biggest parts of surfing is like do well in Hawaii. And when they say do well, it doesn't just mean like go win a contest or go do good in a contest. It means like have a presence. Like go out on those days at Rocky Point and catch waves and get photos and get clips and be out at Pipe on the days when it's happening and get a wave. Like, can you get one wave? And like figure it out. So I was like, oh my gosh. I literally like just had to put myself there for months and months and months. And I just was like, okay, the only way I'm going to do that is if there's no Thanksgivings, there's no Christmases, birthdays. It was all out. I was just like, I'm going to stay in Hawaii. And just whenever pipe was breaking, I was out there. And whenever I got dragged somewhere else by one of my elders, I was like, okay, cool. I remember standing on the beach just scared shitless. Like, I do not want to go out there. Like, everything in my body telling me, no, don't go out. But my friends jump in the water and start paddling, and you're like, oh my gosh.
When you probably think you're the only one that feels that way.
Yeah.
In that crowd, you actually might have been, but
I might have been. Yeah.
You got to deal with you probably at 18-year-old away from home, you got to be thinking like, do I even want to do this?
Yeah.
Like, do I?
I
maybe.
had some challenges going through my head for sure. Like, really, is this what I want to do? Like, this is my life now. Like, I have to just, oh man, put myself in these situations. Like, it's stressful.
I felt like the smallest degree of that the first time I went to Indo. So I had the world's best 40th year of life. It was just the best year. But my wife got me a trip to Indo, a boat trip out to Mentz, and we it was amazing. But COVID was still kind of happening, so the travel schedule, we had to go the long way to Indo. It took 20 something hours to get out there. Then the cab, then the boat. And we went all the way from where we landed. Did we land in Jakarta? And then, we went Padang, yeah. And then we went all the way down to, it'll come to me, the first place that we surfed, but it was like a 12-hour boat ride. Yeah. So I woke up, you're jet lagged, you're disoriented, and I'm I've been surfing for 4 or 5 years maybe. Yeah. In California, in my soft break, and we showed up and it's 12 feet at
Thunders.
We went to Thunders. It wasn't there. It wasn't Bank Vaults. We went there when people start showing up on 7.6s with helmets, I'm not even not doing it. No desire. Yeah. It'll come to me. The Hole. We went to the Hole.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really?
It's 12 feet.
Who was
His name's Luke. He drives the Pelagic.
Yeah.
He's the man. But I also don't think he knew the level.
Right. He's like,
that's why I told you we go to Roxy's at night.
Yeah.
So you start at the Hole.
Stand in some giant pits.
Bro. So it's heavy reef and you see where it breaks, and it's like I felt that fear that you felt, where I was, and it took me through. I'm 40, and it was like, this is dumb.
That's intimidating.
This is stupid. Yeah. And then I was like, this is irresponsible. I'm halfway around the world, and I've got 6 kids at home. Yeah. And then I was like, my brain just did this, where it's like, I don't care if my friends think that I'm a wimp. I don't care. Yeah. But really, I did. And so the first time, and then you got the Australians that are a hoot, they just want to party. Yeah. And so you're sitting in the lineup, and they're like, go, yeah. And it was so, and the sound and the speed, it was so much for me.
A lot. Yeah.
But I remember just pulling in, kind of going straight, and everyone being like, no. Oh. And then I figured it out, and I rode the way. And I remember at night, I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can do it. But
these small victories.
Dude, doing it scared is so important. And I don't think people at least when I look at your career, I had to kind of look for that, because I don't know, you don't talk about it a ton, but I see the real development. People say, oh, it must be nice to be a pro surfer. Oh, it must be nice to have life. Oh, it must be nice to be on Hurley for 20 years. But dude, the price you pay is you had to overcome that mountain. And a lot of people, when they come to that mountain, they're like, this is dumb. Or whatever excuse your brain serves you up, they take,
Yeah, it's like, how do you react when you have that adversity moment and you're confronted with fear, right in your face? And how do you deal with it? How do you overcome it? Some people, it's fight or flight. Some people turn around and run the other way, or some people are like, okay, I'm gonna sit off to the side, figure this out, break it down and try to understand it. I had to analyze myself, why am I scared? Is it, do I have the skill set to overcome this? I'm watching guys surf these waves that if I was surfing in California in a contest at 3 Foot Salt Creek, I know I could beat them in a contest. So I feel like I have the skill level, but to paddle into a 8 or 10 foot wave at Pipe, it's just a mental, hurdle that I had to overcome and deal with. And it's not like you can just go out there cool, I'm going to go practice and get a couple waves. Now you got the whole crowd factor of dealing with the crowd and positioning yourself and finding the wave that you're going to catch and making sure that no one's behind you and you don't want to drop in on someone. And
It's a lot.
And you're going to take lickings, you know. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Like anything. And hopefully they're not too bad. They kind of can, I mean, you talk to any one of my friends, we've all bounced off the bottom really hard. I'm sure we've all had our fair share of concussions. And I mean, Jack Johnson, he wrote a song about it called Drink the Water.
People don't realize how good of a surfer Jack Johnson is.
Oh, he's insane. He was in our group. Like, he was one of the guys.
Yeah.
And he was in the final of the Pipe Masters trials one year. It wasn't during that final, but shortly thereafter, he was out surfing backdoor. And we had this game that if your friends yelled, you won't go, that you kind of had to go, even if it was a closeout.
It's got to be like a unanimous yelling.
Yeah, so it's like if they had all caught a wave and were on the inside and paddling back out, and it was like this wave standing up and you were kind of in the spot, that you'd hear it just like, you won't go, and you
that's like prison rules, you know. There's certain words where you like have to fight. It's like that's the same thing, you know?
I had one at Macaroni's. It was horrible. But anyway, Jack went on this wave, face planted, and just blew his teeth out, split his head open, and he talks about being knocked out and swallowing water and drifting home, like, because his house was down the beach. So
sounds prettier in the song than what you
saw.
saw.
Drink the water, drink it down, you know, like. So, but we've had that. It's just like it's a funny game until that happens, you know. But those are kind of the moments where your peers like really kind of give you a nudge.
Yeah, you had a lot in your environment. Like, when you look at it that way, I think that helped you. Number one, your environment, like your brain, like the brain that said, okay, I don't know. I always think there's a lot of power in like labeling things. Like, you go out there, you're like, okay, you said it. I'm scared. Why am I scared? But if you're just like, oh, surfing's stupid and I don't want to be a pro surfer, that's what your brain's trying to keep you alive. Like, it's trying to get you out of that discomfort, right? And so, but I think there's a lot of like our guys, when they go up to knock doors, to some of them to like knock a stranger's door and like to that, a lot of people, that's as scary. And statistically, it's actually more scary than people charging big waves. People list it as their number one fear.
Right.
So who's the real gangster in this conversation? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No,
I love it.
I'm just kidding. But it's the ability to say, okay, I'm scared. Why am I scared?
Right.
And then be like, okay, you know, then you said, all right, well, do I have this? Like, those are very logical and practical, like healthy brain questions. Right. And I think it sounds like you kind of like took yourself by the hand and guided yourself through it. And then at the end of the day, you're like, hey, this is going to be scary. Yeah. It's like cold plunging. Like, this is going to be cold. We're still going to do it. It's going to suck. It's going to be cold.
But there's going to be something good on the other end.
There's going to be something good on the other end.
Yeah.
And everybody that's had big accomplishments, like, you have to face that.
Yeah.
You have to come off the other side of that, because everybody has an opportunity until they get to that. But really, you know what it feels like. Like, you probably could like access that feeling of what it felt like when you were talking about it. I could kind of feel it, and it took me to the hole that day.
I came to understand that fear is okay. It's okay to be scared, and it's healthy. You should be scared. There shouldn't be a moment paddling out to pipe where you're like,
I got this.
No big deal. I got this. I'm like, that is when you get hurt.
Yeah.
Those are the moments when things go really wrong. So embrace the fear and the respect of that wave, of the ocean at all times. And it can be at 3 foot day at Seaside. Same thing. There's always this level of respect, and it's okay. There's days where your fear levels are going to be higher than others, but to embrace that, is a good thing. Like, it makes you feel alive, right? There's a certain feeling that goes with it. When that fear, there's a line, when the fear crosses over and it turns into panic. And I've tried to explain this to my son, like having a moment where you get caught inside and you bail your board and you're underwater longer than you thought. And all of a sudden, you come up and there's another one, and then all of a sudden there's this like downward spiral that starts to go into panic, and panic really takes things into a whole new realm. So it's really kind of just learning and understanding about the differentiating those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd never heard it broken down like that. Have you heard the story of Laird Hamilton taking Rob Dyrdek out at Jaws?
No.
You're already laughing. It's like such a bad idea.
I love it.
yeah, it's a situation. I'll have to send you the clip, but he basically, like, they were doing some crossover thing, like, I don't know, and like,
I remember those shows. Yeah.
and Laird, as Rob describes it, he says the problem with Laird Hamilton is he thinks everybody can do what he can do.
Right.
And so he's a pro skateboarder, and
Right.
he straps him in, tows him in with the jet ski, and is like,
Wow.
"You got it."
Yeah.
And he almost died. He
Yeah.
was like, it was that situation where panic, and he was under the water.
Yeah.
And as he talks about it now, he's like, "What was he thinking?" You know.
Wow.
So when you say like you should be a little scared, I was thinking like, I don't know if Laird was scared, or like Jamie O'Brien. Like, I don't know if he gets. That guy is just. You know what I mean? I mean, you probably know him, but like, I see him paddling out there on a freaking like air mattress on like 12-foot days, just like
their heart rate's up, you know, like
and it's his backyard.
those guys
so
still like the comfort is there when you've been in those situations over and over and over. Like I look back to when I first paddled out of pipe and sat on the shoulder, and I was scared sitting on the shoulder. Yeah. Right. And then it slowly moved my way up to where I could sit out on the peak. And I still had that level of respect and fear and being scared and understanding like, oh, that's not the wave I want. Like, and really getting the whole level of comfort and being okay with being scared and having that fear.
We talked about, we just did this conference, and we talked about how the environment constantly is going to become more complex. Like the world becomes more complicated. Think of your life. Now it's like, okay, I got kids, and I got, a daughter that lives overseas, and now I got a different part. Like it doesn't ever get easier. It always gets more. And now there's smartphones, and now there's people that have opinions of you online, and that's new, and it's going to get more complex. Yeah. And so the key is, if you increase your capacity at the same time as the world increases its complexity, you generally live a pretty exciting life. Like, yes, pipe. At that point, you were scared. It was complex. It was a crazy environment, but you became more capable. Right. And so then you were able to kind of keep up with it. Right. And I think that happens in life. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things that you face and you move through it. But thanks for sharing that. That part, I was really interested in the Hawaii part of the story, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, dude, Rob Machado, the style lord, scared to paddle out at pipe. But then fast forward, one of your greatest accomplishments.
Well, it just kind of... It made me gain a whole new level of respect for Hawaii, for the waves in Hawaii, for the people, for the locals, everyone who surfs those waves. I looked at guys who were just like, the carpenter that would paddle out and surf some mystery outer reef by himself. You'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's no cameras on that guy.
That dude is a legend. Yeah. And you just learn about all these different characters who are there for whatever reasons. And man, there's just the energy. There's a lot of energy and a lot of just testosterone floating around. It just makes it really intense. But it made me just appreciate it and love it that much more. I kind of miss it. I miss that. Like talking about it right now, I'm like,
it does makes you feel alive.
Yeah.
But then fast forward, one of your greatest, like, at least like professional accolades as far as like the sport would give is winning Pipe Masters.
Yeah, that was the highlight of my competitive career.
Why did it mean 100%? So much?
Why did it mean so much? I think, the first year that I got on tour, like kind of going back, actually even. Like I'll focus on the high five year. Like coming into the final event, I was ranked second behind Sonny Garcia, and Kelly was in third.
Should we just tell the listeners to just watch Momentum Generation if you don't know what the high five years is? There's a documentary on HBO. I feel like they made it a bigger part of your life than it actually is, but you'll understand what the high five is if you watch Momentum Generation on HBO. It's awesome, by the way.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
I see Kalani around here all the time.
Yeah. But to kind of preface the story, like Sonny, we came into that event and they were like, hey, Sonny, I remember we had an interview. There was like the three of us all sitting there, and they're like, Sonny, like who are you most worried about? And he's like, oh, Kelly. And they're like, well, Rob's in second. Like, you're not worried about him? And he's like, no, he's scared of big waves. And Like, yeah, it was just Sonny. He was just so blunt, right? And I was just sitting there like, oh man,
just
like,
Hawaii, and a bad dude. Sonny's like, he's the truth. Like in Hawaii, like he's like a big deal.
Rob's never proven himself in big waves, and like he's never caught a real wave at pipe, and like, you know,
he just knows how to cut you right to the core.
It was just like very factual, and like I was like, oh man,
everybody knows.
Ouch. Okay,
yeah.
But so fast forward in that event, I end up, the waves were pumping. And everything started clicking. I started catching waves. My lineups were working. I felt the comfort was there. I was dealing with the fear, and like I was making through heats. And I end up in the semifinals, right? And I was like, this is success, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Like I don't care what happens. So, you know, I had proven myself. Now from that moment on, every time the Pipe Masters came around, it was like, I was going to be considered like a guy that could potentially do okay, right? And then fast forward to 2000, you know, that event, especially on the last day, we woke up in the morning, it was too big, it was washing through from Second Reef. There was a little bit of cat and mouse. You had to find the waves. It was kind of gnarly. But by the time, as the day went on, by midday, the swell backed off just enough where it wasn't breaking the Second Reef anymore. I was just loading up on the first reef, and there was no rights. It was all lefts, and it was a legitimate pipeline day, 8 to 12 feet, and I was just in my zone. Like I really locked in. I found my rhythm. I knew what waves I wanted. I had a heat. My quarterfinal heat was against Andy Irons, and Andy was just on a terror. He had beaten Kelly in the heat before. So here I am. I'm like, wow, I'm going up against this guy is on fire. And I went out, we had a crazy heat, and I ended up beating him, which I was like, oh man, did I just peak? Like I had the best heat I'd had the whole contest. I had like 3 really good scores, and I'm like, oh man, I did it. I did it. Like I made it. I'm in the semis, and another notch like in my belt, I felt like, and then I made it through the semi, and then I came up against this Australian Mick Lowe in the final, and we kind of went back to back in this heat, and I ended up getting a 10-point ride in my last wave to like nail the whole thing, and just like couldn't have like been scripted any better, and that was it, man. It didn't compare to any other contest that I won. It was a personal battle. When I think back to the little kids surfing inside Swamis, to like winning the Pipe Masters, having posters of Jerry Lopez on my wall, thinking like, oh man, I'll never ride a wave like that. That's scary and big. And then I had those posters of myself. Yeah. You know, it was like, it was pretty wild.
That's really cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I was just thinking, man, 10 foot at pipe, that's when like the ground shakes. Yeah. Like it's such a, and the whole community comes out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like like there's no parking anywhere. It's just like, what a thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is. And especially when it's pumping, like when the waves are good, the beach is packed, and man, it is quite the atmosphere. It's electric. You know, the wave is electric, and the vibe, just the energy is so intense. And and you're going out there, it's kind of weird in a sense when you paddle out to pipe and there's no one out. Like the crowd is almost like comforting in a way.
Yeah, that was the thing I liked about, like, we'll maybe jump around for those that know, but like that was the thing I liked about the high five controversy is the conversation of like, hey man, we were two like buds and competitors in the prime of our lives at this most perfect place alone. You're never alone on a good day ever. Like I
dream
love
of that.
Yeah, and so then like I feel like there was a lot of people that maybe tried to turn that into something it wasn't, but I loved your mental ability to pull it back to listen, man, like this is how I view it. Because stuff like that, like, oh, a missed opportunity or did a friend betray me in competition, whatever, that could really canker things. But I know. I appreciate the mindset of like, it was a dream to be there. It was a dream to be out on pipe that day.
I think at one point we were sitting out the back and we looked in at the beach, and however many people there's on the beach, 10,000 people or whatever. And we're like, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, we're surfing perfect 8 to 10 foot pipe, like by ourselves. Yeah. Like that in itself like, can we extend this heat a little longer?
Yeah, right.
Like, how can we make this
Yeah.
last longer? Because this is something that you just dream about as a kid.
And then you build a wave pool that's recreates it somewhat, right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk about your decision to move on from pro surfing, because what a lot of people may not know is there's probably free surfers before you, but you're the first that I've seen. So correct me if I'm wrong. You're the first I've seen to really make lifestyle surfing a viable like vocation, like where you could. And it's funny because I see early 2000s, right? Like 2001 is when you come off tour.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because the world was kind of going that way. I feel like you actually kind of caught a current,
Right?
because Supercross is a really good example. Like the early Jeremy McGrath days, and all those guys, like they were top racers, but there was starting to be a group that's like, I'm gonna go ride the hills and take cameras, and what we're doing, I think people would want to see.
Right.
So it's kind of like action sports lifestyle was happening right at that time, and I'm sure like the movements, and you kind of like took a little from each other, whether you knew it or not, and fueled it. But that's really, I think, what. Personally, I graduated high school in 2000. It's what captivated me.
Yeah.
Like it was like,
I
always joke with my wife, like, I don't like my recreation to be structured. My life is very structured. And so if I'm surfing, I just want to I just want to enjoy it and express myself and be there.
Yeah.
And so talk about maybe the life events that drove you to considering it and how you went your own way there.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely didn't happen overnight. You know, I came off tour in 2001. I still continued to compete kind of in events here and there off and on for the next, I think, five years. Yeah. Cause I won the US Open in 2006. But during that time I was doing a lot of, movie projects. We made, Shelter. I started working with Thomas Campbell, on the Sprout and the Present. So I was getting to experience what it was like not being on tour and working with very creative people and going on trips with a nice little tight group of people. And the creative side was really kind of enticing to me. But I still had this 1 foot kind of still in the competitive vibe. I just couldn't let go of it. And I think one guy who was a mentor to me and a dear friend and is Bob Hurley. He from the beginning when he sponsored me was he just told me I just want you to go surfing. I don't if you want to go on tour, great, that's cool, that means you're going surfing, but I just want you to wake up every day and go surfing, because people like watching you surf and you just bring a good energy to the water. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll do that. I'd love to do that. And he's like, cool, let's go to Fiji and let's go have fun. Let's go on trips. And we traveled around the world together. And
when you had other more lucrative offers that were different, right?
I did. I had an offer.
Potentially lucrative, right?
Potentially lucrative. They're all incentive based. If you do this and do that,
if you win a certain amount of video parts or something.
Yeah, and it was kind of do I want to go jump through all those hoops and be on the circus and be traveling around with 40 guys and everybody's hungry and aggressive and really, or I could surf a few events here and there. I would surf specific pipe events because I really liked them, and I'd surf the US Open because they're at home, and I'd surf trestles because it was close to home. I got to compete in kind of a couple key events that I liked, and that was great, but I got to work on projects and I got to see the effects of these projects when these movies would come out, and we'd go to these premieres and the people that would show up, and it was these are the people this is the reason why they surf.
Yeah, it's actually more relatable than what you were doing before.
Way more.
Yeah, surfing has and competitive sports, they have a stage and a showing, and you get the ticket and you go to the thing and you watch it or whatever. But my life is not like that.
Right.
My life is what attracted me to surfing in general and your surfing specifically. I was like, oh, dude, that looks fun. If I could capture what that probably feels like, that would probably make me happy, Yeah. And so I that's the thing I love about action sports is it's it actually is more relatable, but you didn't have a model on how to capture. That was still pre-social media, still pre-YouTube. So you're probably trying to get photos and stuff places. But did Bob or you have an early vision for what it could be, or did you have a spark or an inkling that you just kind of followed and it developed as you did?
Bob just kind of inspired me to just go down my own path. And look, yeah, we'll send some guys to shoot, and we just want to document what you're doing. We just want to take photos of you when you're in Indonesia and you're in all these cool places, and we have the avenue, being Hurley, to put it out, on our web page back then, or put an ad in a magazine.
Yeah.
And it just creates, we can actually utilize you way more than when you were on tour.
Sure.
We have so much more access to you. And I was like, great, I get to do fun stuff, great stuff with good people, and work with a brand that is going to just showcase that in a great light. And it was just like a win-win all the way around. And we just kept going down that road and following that. And it's like you said, I love to turn on the contest and watch the contest, and a lot of people do. You want to see the best surfers in the world surfing in the best waves, and it's cool to see. You're like, oh, that's cool. Do I want to do that? How many people that surf in the world want to put on a jersey and go compete at the highest level? Very, very few.
Yeah, or do what it takes to get that right, like if you even understood what it took.
But how many people want to be walking down this white sand beach in Indonesia with a perfect left wrapping around the island? Like, everyone's going, sign me up.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I actually I love that it's transitioned that way. And now there's people that can make a living, like, inspiring, and it's probably connected you to the community a lot more. Like, anyway, it's something that I appreciated. Did you get, watching like The Drifter and watching things like that? Like, that's a full length movie that you put out, your friend Taylor Steele. No one was doing that back then. So did you get a lot of hate? Like, were people thinking it was dumb? Or, I mean, you had a lot of respect in the community too, but what was that like? Like, did people not get it?
Yeah.
Or was it pretty much people were cool with you exploring the path?
Yeah. The Drifter was, I think there was a lot of excitement around it. Hurley fully supported it. They were like, yep, cool. I basically packed up and moved to Indo for a year. And Taylor was living there at the time. We assembled a little crew. They would just basically follow me around and film my sessions, and we kind of pieced together
like a plot.
Yeah, we were like, we want to tell a story. Like, I went on all these wild adventures. I was traveling to all these outer islands and running into all these different people, and there was something there, but we were just having a hard time. There's a bit of a struggle to kind of piece together the story and the plot, and we did the best we could, and we kind of put out a movie that wasn't just your hardcore surf movie. It wasn't like here's just a bunch of waves and music. It was trying to tell a story, like, hey, I needed to disconnect, like get away from California, get away from Bali, like get out to the outer islands, remove myself to a place where I finally was completely alone. And there's a quote in the movie, and this was kind of the most powerful thing that I took away from the movie, was that sometimes when you're most alone, you're not alone at all. And that was like me being just buried in my own thoughts, like sleeping in a tent in the hills in Sumba, okay, there's no human in a couple hours close to me, and I'm just here. I have no car. I have no form of transportation. I just got some noodles and a pan with some water. And that was kind of when that hit me. And it was very like, okay, I'm not trying to run away from something. I just had to dive deeper into myself and understand what was important to me. And that's kind of when I goes into the scene where I go into the village and I'm seeing all these kids that have nothing. They're playing with rocks and they're spinning a little tire down a dirt track. Like, they don't have all the luxuries that, most kids have in a first world. So it was kind of like, that's not that bad. I need to go back and look, I got to ride a bunch of amazing waves on that trip and really push my surfing in waves that I had never surfed, and there was that whole side to it as well. So it was just a big exploration, really.
That's cool. I had I don't know if there's a need, definitely, especially now with how many just messages you receive, not just like communication, but just like everybody's like, there's a war for your attention. There kind of always has been, but it's getting more, right? There's so many ways they can access you now, right? Like, and I remember when I'd gone out to Indo, I don't know if it's something about that place, but you're so far away.
Yeah.
And the environment's so different than I mean, there's just thousands of little islands out there, and the water's so hot and everything's so hot, and the people are, anyway. But the first, like, now they have like Starlink, but when I went out, they don't have Starlink. So we did not touch land for like 10 days, and you couldn't communicate except for there was a sat phone for an emergency. And so I noticed, like, I kind of got a chance to observe my brain, because it's just, I'm like, you're just highly dopamine addicted or whatever. Like, you're just so used to the quick hits of, did I get a text? Did I get a like? Did I get an email? What do I need to do? And so when you're out there, it shuts off. And I noticed, like, I was writing in a journal every night when I was there, and I was like, the first 7 days, I didn't like my thoughts. Like, it was your lizard brain's just da, 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 da. And then how it would often manifest, like if I didn't give it the attention, it would be like anxiety. Like, what if there's an earthquake, or what if your son gets hurt, or like, you wouldn't know for weeks if your child could get hurt and you wouldn't know. Like, you're like, somebody could come into your house, like all that kind of stuff. But then after like 7 or 8 days, I started to not have those thoughts, and it was a little bit more optimistic. After the 2-week trip, by the end, like, I found my like encumbered self and it was like, hey, things are fine. Things are always fine. They're probably going to be fine. In the last 2 weeks, if you had, like, you've been alive for all these years, if any of those things you're worried about ever happened to you. And it was weird because I was like, oh dude, like, it takes a second for your brain to heal and to get off of whatever stress it's exposed to. And when I came home, I was like trying to explain to my like wife, like, I think my brain healed when I was out there. But then two things happened when I came back. One, I was fearless of any California wave. And two, I had this kind of calm about me. And I think the calm probably lasted maybe 4 days. And the fear probably lasted maybe 14 days. Because now on a big day out, that's gone. I was like, where's the Indo thing? It's gone. But anyway. Before we jump off, I wanted to talk briefly. We grabbed some content the other day, but just your experience with solar and how that's played into your life, and what has been attractive to you about the partnership we recently entered it, where we re-kitted your home and brought you into 2025.
I know, man. Full update.
You've had many updates. Like, we mentioned this on film, but you're one of the few people that I know that's been through a full solar product cycle.
I have. Yeah. My original product being, I purchased solar and put it on my house in 2006, 2007, somewhere around there.
So Sunrun started in 2007. So you predate, like, I was with our specific, but solar existed, but you were even before.
Company. Like, I mean, honestly, I was building a home, and I wanted to make my home be off the grid, but that's impossible when you're building in rural San Diego. They were like, you want to put a water tank? Like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I was like thinking like, well, if I could just cut off from, I don't need to take your water. I'll just collect water. And, I was just, maybe I was ahead of it. I don't know. But part of that was putting solar on my house. And at that time, it made total sense. It produced enough energy for what my house needed. But as time went on, the house has more people in it now, and we grew, and the system at one point wasn't producing probably not even half as much as it should. I mean, as I needed. So
life changes, right?
Life changes, yeah. And I found Sunrun, and I was like, you guys do what? Like, you guys come and install the whole system?
How did that happen? I don't know how that happened. How did that? Did someone knock your door, or did they?
It was, or maybe it was at an event, and someone was like, "Hey,
put the plug in.
Like, we should look at your solar." And see what's going on, and see what your bill is, and I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I own the system. Like, I paid a lot of money for it. Like, I'd love to know if it's actually doing its job. So to come to find out, it wasn't doing enough. So Sunrun came in, and we're like, hey, let's throw the system on the other part of your roof, and we'll generate enough more electricity so that we can kind of get you up to speed and balanced out. That was in, gosh, I don't remember when that was. That probably was in like 15
5 years ago. Oh, it was longer 16. Than that. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember at that time they're like, we could take your old system off if you want. And I'm like, well, it's still got another 5 years on it, or
and
something.
You paid for it, so you might as well ride it out.
I'm like, let's just let that guy ride it out. So, fast forward to a couple weeks ago, as we came in, and finally the old system is right at the end of its lifespan. It's outdated, and it was time, and we tore the old system off that I had originally purchased and
thanked it profusely and sent it to the recycling center.
Off it goes. Thank you for your time and
for
your
the energy.
And we put in a whole new program, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I kidded you with batteries and stuff. Batteries are cool. Batteries are actually like the energy, kind of like lifestyle energy industry. Like your path is in surfing, like there was kind of this traditional path of competition and stuff like that, and then you kind of went your way of lifestyle expression and inspiring people through how you lived and what brands like correlated with you. Sunrun's on that kind of journey itself, kind of as a company where there's the traditional like we make money, we sell power, but we're really moving towards how do people live. And like one of the things that's cool about your property is you moved into that property with some world experience of how other people live, had an idea and a vision of what you wanted, but then your life changed and you had more people live in your home and you expanded and now you use more. Now you have a sauna and an ice bath and your home serves kind of a different purpose. Right. And now there's different risks and threats. Like the grid's not as stable as it used to be. Fire and like weather, catastrophic events coupled with just how antiquated the grid is has really changed the sourcing of energy to that home, right? And so to me, it's really cool to see young Rob buying his first house with his like career winnings with an idea, and now like wise Rob with a family and a different environment and still finding like alternative lifestyle products. So Sunrun's moving the way of being a lifestyle brand where we can do other products or we can do other solutions. But this time, the cool thing is the conversation was a little more like, how do you want to use the space? What kind of batteries do we want to talk about? And it was really satisfying for me to be in the industry and to be like, wow, this is cool. Like this product is cool for someone that is intentional about the way they live. We got options, and if the partnership makes sense, we should do it. And it felt like it did make sense. Yeah. And so it was a cool thing to be a part of, And I think you've kind of lived out loud and been a little bit ahead of like how you, like your intentionality, but now there's a lot of people that look at it and are like, hey, like, I don't want to contribute to the problem, and it would be cool to have some backup. And if I could make a little money selling the power back, it's one of those things where we have the building blocks for people to construct like the kind of energy lifestyle that they want.
I think it's amazing. Like I'm a huge fan. I was just talking to my best friend. He lives up in Ventura, and I was telling him what I was coming up here to chat with you, and he's like, I'm like, yeah, Sunrun. You ever heard of it? And I was selling him on it the whole way up. Program, and I'm like, dude, you don't have solar? And he's like, we thought about it. And I'm like, dude, I gotta connect you with these people.
Let's connect, so, and then let's give you a kickback. We'll give you we'll make it worth your time.
But it's just like that's not something. It doesn't feel like you're selling anything. You're just like you're doing the right thing. Yeah. And it's like that's how I was at the beginning. Like I was like, man, it's sunny here so much. Like, why wouldn't you put solar in your house? And if you can do it like the way your guys' program's set up, like it just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say like when we're knocking doors, like cold contacting, and we have a good connection with somebody, transition the house and start to build them a system, they'll have that moment where they kind of wake up, where they're like, door-to-door salesperson has a stigma, and then like, but after you talk to somebody, there's this part where it's like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah. Like, this is different than I thought it would be. And so at that moment, people always say, does anybody ever say no to you guys? And my answer is always the same. And I'll say, well, no one that hears me. Like people say no all the time because they're experiencing their own life and they're doing their own stuff. But if we connect on this concept, it's pretty inarguably better. Yes. Right. And so it's just people have their own lives, but I love the opportunity to connect and be like, hey, like when I saw your Viore videos that you shot, you have a lot of like environmental, like I know you live your life that way and try to be a good steward and like try to like minimize your harmful impact and like want to live a certain way. But when I saw those videos, I was like, these should be Sunrun videos. Like literally like your home is right across the street from the ocean that raised you. You're building products that are sustainable for your surf brands. You try to live with intentionality. And dude, to me, I'm honored that like our company could be a part of the journey and that it works without like forcing it. It's not like, hey, we're a tire company. It'd be cool if you gave us an endorsement or whatever. No, it's so good. No, knock if you have a tire company. You got a tire company on the roster. But I do. I think it's cool. And a lot of the reason for this podcast is the work that our guys are doing in the neighborhoods is hard, but it matters. And I think when they see people that they relate to that can share their side of it, it's really encouraging, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. When someone walks up and knocks on your door, you're like, hold on a second. What are you trying to see? You know, what is this?
Yeah.
But like you said, the people that hear you and take a moment and listen, it's like, oh, wow, for real? Then it's like they start questioning, like, how is this even possible? Like, this is too good. It sounds too good to be true. So,
did you notice it happened when we were filming at your shaping bay?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. The neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the guy that set Rob up with the system, he's actually doing mine. Your system is more hooked up than mine.
Yeah.
Both of our systems are more hooked up than James's. James needs to get on the bus here and get it done. But Josh handles a lot of like employee accounts, a lot of VIP accounts.
Okay.
And so we were in the driveway of like your shaping bay where you custom make your boards.
Yeah.
And these neighbors come out and they're kind of like, what are you guys doing? And Josh went in and like designed him a system, and now we're in the process of putting solar on your neighbor's house. Like it's a cool thing, right? Like when people kind of wake up to the idea, like, oh, that's better.
Okay,
You know?
my UPS driver, he pulled up in the alley when we were shooting and like
that
dropped
same
off.
day.
Yeah, when we were all back there, like we had car, you know, or I mean, he's there every day, but he was like, hey, did you put like solar on your roof or something? And I was like, yeah. Well, and then I explained the whole thing, you know, I had solar, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, dude, like I put solar on my roof like 10 years ago. And I'm like, who'd you use? And he's like, I don't even know. They're out of business. And I'm like, I need to connect you with some people.
Yeah.
Like we figure it out. Like, what is it doing? Is it working? Is it not working? Can it be
What we need to do is just license you.
Right?
We just need to give you an ID badge and just handle your own business, man. You don't even need to connect us.
Cards
Be
everywhere.
like, hey, I'll just fix this for you, man. Like,
I got it.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I'm
hey,
excited, man. This is good stuff. Like, I love the whole concept. I spent a lot of time outdoors in the sun. I love the sun, and might as well capture it on my roof and use it for good things.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you spending time with us today. I hope that this next system that you have, like, I hope it is actually exciting and you notice like the value of it. And I hope it's something that makes your life better. Thanks for being on here and sharing your story and for, you know, connecting with us. It does give us a boost to hear people apply these principles kind of in their own way. And there's a lot of people, you're a staple in not just the Southern California where a lot of our, business is, but really the world over as an example of somebody that kind of lives a life on their terms. And I appreciate that. And thanks for sharing today.
Thanks for having me, man. Pleasure to be here.
If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram @RunTheLeague.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.